Europe continues to be the worst affected continent with over 60,000 deaths. Europe's death toll now accounts for more than 70% of the deaths recorded the world over. France, Spain and Italy continue to be the worst affected countries. Let's begin with Italy now. The country recorded around 542 cases in the last 24 hours, bringing the total death toll to more than 17,600. Italy continues to remain the worst hit country in the world. Meanwhile, the Italian government has a rule that charity migrant ships will not be allowed to dock at Italian ports as they are not safe. This means migrants rescued at sea can no longer disembark in Italy. Charities rescuing migrants have condemned Italy's decision to close all its ports. According to estimates, nearly 3,000 migrants have landed in Italy so far this year. On to Spain now. The daily death toll rose for the first time in 5 days. The country recorded 757 deaths in the last 24 hours. But authorities believe that there is still some hope of the lockdown being eased. Officials are currently working on a plan to lift some of the restrictions. France has also crossed the 10,000 death toll mark, becoming the fourth country in the world to register that number. According to sources, France is likely to further extend its lockdown beyond the 15th of April. French President Emmanuel Macron will address the nation again next week. Meanwhile, the pandemic has plunged the country into recession in its worst performance since 1945. France's economy shrinked around 6% in the first quarter of 2020. In Switzerland, the cases continue to rise, with the number of infections rising to 23,280. Switzerland recorded around 895 deaths so far. Emergency measures in the country have been extended by a week to the 26th of April, but could be eased before May. Meanwhile, EU is currently dealing with its worst crisis since its foundation. The president of the European Union's top science body had earlier stepped down, citing frustration over the bloc's response to the crisis. Mauro Ferrari has even accused the bloc of institutional resistance and political infighting. But even as the bloc stares at an economic crisis, the European Union finance ministers have failed to agree on a relief package for the coronavirus-stricken economies. The talks were stalled after a record 16 hours. The North-South divide on corona bonds continues to expose the deep divides within the bloc. The feud between Italy and the Netherlands over the terms of that loan getting delayed, and the release of economic aid worth €500 billion hence is stuck. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez even went ahead to warn that the bloc might fall apart, quote-unquote, if a solution is not found soon enough. Our correspondent Lucy Hof has been getting us the very latest, sent us this report from Brussels.
And that's a message that's been reiterated by the Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte this morning. He's warned that this could be the end of the EU as we know it. Italy, as you were just outlining there, has been pushing for what's known as corona bonds, a shared pooled common debt around the bloc as a means of mitigating the economic damage. Italy particularly has been crippled by the COVID-19 pandemic, and the recession is thought to be deeper than that even of the 2008 financial crisis, a downturn of which, the worst in modern history. So certainly Italy has been disappointed with the response from the EU. The ECB, the European Central Bank, initially was reticent in giving support to Italy, of course, as it's been dealing with the worst of this crisis for several weeks now. So yes, this has really pushed the EU to its limits, and the warnings from Italy and Spain, the worst affected country, as they desperately seek aid, have been stark. This is an immense challenge, and the economic package is being compared to the Marshall Plan, which is the package of economic measures that was introduced in the wake of the Second World War. But some saying the recession, is comparable but could potentially be worse.